ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। नमस्ते मेरे प्यारे दोस्तों, माय डियर फ्रेंड्स। दिस इज वीडियो नंबर 14 on Vivek Chudamani of Adi Shankaracharya. This video starts with stanza number 184, Vijnanamaya Kosha, intellectual sheath. बुद्धिर बुद्धिर इंद्रियहि सार्ध है सवृत्ति ही कर्तृलक्षण है विज्ञान में कोश है सयात पुंस संसार कारणम. The intellect with its modifications along with the organs of perception form the intellectual sheath, Vijnanamaya Kosha. It has the characteristics of the agent or doer, which is the cause for transmigration. The Vijnanamaya Kosha intellectual sheath constitutes the intellect, the sense organs of perception, and all the different modifications of the intellect. It controls the organs of perception. This intellectual sheath in man wields the infinite reality. It is the cause for sansar. The modifications of the intellect are the awareness of doing and the concept of I am the doer. This concept creates more and more vasanas. In order to exhaust the vasanas, the individual has to move from one field of enjoyment to another. So there are births and deaths again and again. How this Vijnanamaya Kosha is the cause for sansar is explained in the following verse. Verse number 185. अनुव्रज चित्त प्रतिबिंब शक्ति विज्ञान संगह प्रकृति विकार है ज्ञान क्रियावान मित्य जनसरम देह इंद्रियादि वभिमन्यते भर्षम. Accompanied by a reflection of the light of Chit, the intellectual sheath is a modification of Prakriti. It is endowed with the function of knowledge and is always completely identified with the body, sense organs, etc. The Vijnanamaya Kosha is constantly accompanied by the reflection of the light of Chit consciousness. Consciousness is all pervasive at all times. The world of plurality floods up within it. It, as it were, consciousness reflected in the intellect is intelligence, just as the electricity reflected in or functioning in the bulb is light, in the fan is rotation, in the heater is heat, and in the refrigerator is cold. In Sankaraj and the Vedic times, there was no electricity, so he has taken the example of the sun being reflected in, conditioned by functioning through playing in a bucket of water. This mighty power of eternal consciousness, God, which is the spark of life in every one of us, is not confined to the within. It is present everywhere at all times. This consciousness playing in the pools of thought is the individual in whom it generates the doership idea. Where the doership has ended, there the individuality has also ended. This idea is explained in the Upanishads through the reflection theory, Pratibimbavada. The matter vectors cannot function by themselves in the absence of consciousness. They are, after all, composed of inert cells. The intelligence is there only because of the consciousness playing through the intellect in us. The matter equipment, the intellect becomes brilliant because of the light of consciousness. The intellect by itself has no intelligence. It is like a mirror in darkness. The function of this intelligence, the Vijnanamaya Kosha, is to know. Jnana is its main function. It gives rise to the concept of I, the knower. The mind projects the world of objects and the intellect illumines them with its intelligence, which is reflected in the light of consciousness, and there arises the notion of I know. This process of mental projection and intellectual recognition goes on at all times, and the feelings of I and mine are created. The feelings of I is with reference to the body, the sense organs, pranas, and the mind. The feeling of mine is with reference to the world of objects. This intellect, due to the light of consciousness playing in it, develops the capacity to illumine things projected by the mind, and as a final result of all these, it comes to identify with the body, the sense organs, etc. It becomes the restless ego, the I-ness, and identifying with the objects perceived by the sense organs, it provides the my-ness. Thereafter starts the I and my play, which we call sansar. This great tyrannical power which enters our bosom, loots our discrimination, and ties us down to our limitations is none other than the Vijnanamaya Kosha. If a person withdraws from this sheath, he shall have neither this I-ness nor this my-ness, nor will he identify any longer with the body, the sense organs, etc., and have the feeling of mind regarding the world of objects around him. Stanza number 186. अनादि कालो यम हम संभावो जीवः समस्त व्यवहार बूढ़ा करोति कर्माणे अपि पूर्व वासने पुण्या अन्य पुण्यानि च तत्फलानि. Stanza number 187. भुक्ते विचित्रावपि योनिषु वृज्जन्ययति निर्यातध्ये ऊर्ध्व में से अस्यौ विज्ञान में से जागृत है स्वप्नाद्य अवस्था सुख दुख भोग है. It is without beginning, is of the nature of the ego and is called the jiva, which carries out the entire range of activities on the relative plane. It performs good and evil actions according to its previous vasanas and experiences their results. It comes and goes up and down, taking birth in the various bodies, the waking, dream, and other states, and the experiences of joy and sorrow belong to this intellectual sheath. The concept of I is beginningless. It started even before the beginning of time. Before one recognizes an object, there must already be an I. If there be an object and the I is not present, there cannot be an experience. For every experience, the I factor representing the subject is indispensable. I, the ego, myself, am the subject. So the first object that emerged at the beginning of creation must have been the first thought at zero time. When I arrogated the first thought to myself, the concept of I do arose. Thus the ego is beginningless, anadi. This I-ness, aham, swabhava, which is beginningless, is the jiva, the individuality. All activities on the relative plane are carried out by this jiva. The light of consciousness conditioned by thought carries out all the activities in the world. When the last thought is ended, there is no more an ego and so no more any actions. To realize consciously and dynamically this state of actionlessness is called samadhi. The jiva carries out the activities of the world in strict adherence to a blueprint provided by itself. This blueprint, the peculiar mode of one's activities, is determined by vasanas acquired earlier. The activity may be good, bad, or indifferent. It is all ordered by the texture of one's vasanas. Accordingly, when the jiva acts in the world ordered by its past vasanas, the activities produce results. These fruits are enjoyed by the jiva under finite varieties of physical environments. In order to act as per the old vasanas and to enjoy the fruits of actions, the individual has to take birth in various fields of activities, high and low, with reference to this relative existence. The three states of consciousness, the waking, dream, and deep sleep, are conditionings of this Vijnanamaya Kosha. The experiencer of joy and sorrow in these three states of consciousness is this intellectual sheath. In whatever state there is an experience, the concept of I is immanent. Stanza number 188. De adi nishta asram dharam karam guna abhimanam सततम ममेति विज्ञान कोशो में प्रति प्रकाश पर कृष्ट सानिध्य वशाय तप्रात्मन अतो भवतेश उपाधिर्ष्य यदात्मदहो संसरति भर्मेण. Identifying with the attributes of the orders of life, their duties and functions which actually belong to the body, it considers them as its own. The Vijnanamaya Kosha is extremely radiant because of its nearness to the Supreme Self. It is a superimposition on the Self which, when it identifies with it, suffers transmigration through delusion. The intellectual sheath is subtler than the mental, the vital air and food sheaths. Owing to its subtlety, it has the maximum pervasiveness. In the order of sheaths, it is nearest to the Atman, the Self. Consequently, it is extremely brilliant compared with all other sheaths. It has more reflectiveness. This sheath is the conditioning nearest to reality. The term Atma Dhihi is indicative of the ego Jiva, at the same time defining the individuality. The Atma conditioned in the intellect is the individuality, the ego. This jiva is the factor which undergoes the phenomenon of coming and going, the phenomenon of transmigration. Transmigration is occasioned by the delusion of not knowing the self as the reality and considering the not self, the jiva, to be the reality. Atma plus Dhihi, Atam Dhihi, that is Jiva, ego, the light of consciousness in us, the Atman functioning in the thought springs. Dhihi is the ego, the Jiva. So Atam Dhihi means the individuality, the PFT, the ego. Pratibimba Vada, the theory that the ego is the reflection of the self in the intellect. Atma unattached. Stanza number 189. योऽयं विज्ञानमे प्राणेषु हृदि स्फुरतयं ज्योतिः कूटस्थः सन्नात्मा कर्ता भोक्ता भवतुपाधिस्थः. The Atman, which is knowledge absolute, shines within the pranas in the heart, though it is immutable. It becomes the doer and the experiencer because of its superimposition, the intellectual sheath. In Vedanta, it has been constantly asserted that the seat of the intellect is in the heart, and that in the cave of the heart is the intellect, and in the midst of the intellect is the shining Atman. This is just a poetic expression. A man with noble emotions is called a man of heart, and he who is bereft of emotion is called heartless. The mind full of love is called the heart. When I enter a rocky cave, then above me, below me, to my sides and in front, in fact everywhere there is nothing but rock. In the same way, when I enter the heart cave, all around me there can only be heart. Heart means love, pure love. In such an atmosphere of universal love, the seeker's intellect must function. In the cave of the intellect is Brahma. That is when the intellect is contemplating upon the Atma in an atmosphere of universal love, it will be able to recognize the self as the light illumining its meditative single-pointed thought. Therefore, the teachers of Vedanta say that in the Hridaya is the Buddhi. The heart agitated with likes and dislikes is called the mind. The mind is the choking cord around the neck of the individual, while the heart is the releasing angel that helps one to free oneself from the thraldom of the mind. To achieve it, one has to bring the mind to a single pointed thought. This is not possible unless there is love. With love or devotion, when one moves towards the Atman, the mind becomes single pointed with only one thought in it, and he who illumines that thought is Brahma. This condition of meditative poise has been indicated in the verse when it says that the intellectual sheath is in the heart. Kutastha means that which remains immutable like an anvil. An anvil allows all changes to take place upon it, but itself does not undergo any change. Immutable, therefore, is the significance of the term Kutastha. The Atman, the self as Kutastha, is immutable and as conditioned by the BMI Upadistha. It apparently becomes the doer and the enjoyer. This egocentric attitude of the ever-changing, sorrowful, miserable individuality and its experiencerhood comes to the Atma because of the conditionings, upadhis, which are themselves only illusory projections due to man's ignorance. Stanza number 190. Swam priched mupete buddhe sata da दोषेण परम मर्षात्मन सर्वात्मक सन्नपि वीक्षते स्वयं स्वतः पृथक्त्वेन मृदो घटानिव. This Atma, although it is the self in every existing thing, assumes the limitations of the intellect and wrongly identifying with this entirely false entity, it considers itself as something different, like the mud pots from the mud of which they are made. The nature of the infinite consciousness everywhere is one without a second. Even then, out of delusion, it comes to accept the conditionings as real and continues to identify with the matter vestures. Having identified with the conditionings, it suffers from its sense of limitations. Thus, if the body is slightly indisposed, the individual suffers and groans under the indisposition. Having been conditioned by the intellect, a man becomes identified with it and behaves as though he is the experiencer of the joy and sorrows in life. All this is indeed false, but because of this identification, he understands himself to be a separate entity and starts seeking truth, which is his very own nature. He believes that truth is something other than himself. The fallacy in the notion of God being someone other than the devotee is being brought out here very forcefully. If the idea that truth is something other than me is accepted, I should negate my BMI, for they are only my conditionings projected by my imagination. All that I have to negate is the ghost which is not there, so that I may ultimately understand the post. Just as when the pots made of mud develop individual identities of name and forms, we recognize them as separate from each other, but in truth they all are in essence mud only. Stanza number 191. उपाधि संबंध वशात परात्मा हुय्या हय उपाधि धर्मा अनुभाति तद्गुण अयो विकारन विकार विल्हिवे तिस्थिदैक रूपोपि पर स्वभावत. Even though the Supreme Self is by nature perfect and ever unchanging, due to its relationship with the superimpositions, it assumes the characteristics of these superimpositions and seems to act just as the equipments do, like the changeless fire assuming the forms of the iron pieces which it turns red hot. The supreme reality, due to its identification with the conditionings upadhis, behaves in accordance with the dharmas of the conditionings. Life, when it functions through the body, assumes the qualities of the body. A clean glass near a blue cloth appears blue. If the cloth is red, the glass appears red. As the color of the cloth, so appears the color of the glass. The glass has no color of its own. It borrows the color of its environments. In the same way, the Atma functioning through the Upadhis acquires the properties of the Upadhis for the time being. In this verse, to indicate the same idea, another example is given. Fire has neither shape nor form, Spherical heat, cubical heat, cylindrical heat, rectangular heat, etc. are not possible, nor has the heat any weight. 10 ounce heat, 1 pound heat, 5 pounds heat too are impossible. But when iron pieces are put in the fire assumes their shapes and weights. These are not the properties of the fire, but because of the iron pieces, the fire is said to have shape and weight. Paramatman is ever the same. Sada ekarupaha. It is of the nature of existence. It is pure isness, the suchness in such and such a thing. If that suchness is removed from it, the thing will not have existence. Existence alone is its nature. There is no being or non-being in it. Nothing has ever emerged out of it. In its pure existence state, it is not even consciousness. Consciousness it becomes only when it is illumining objects. It cannot be said to be anything. It is of the nature of existence. No other description is possible, and you are that. Even now, you are that. Nobody can say, I have no existence. I exist. I am is the universal experience of all. That amness is the truth. It is of one nature because it transcends all nature. As consciousness, you cannot use any other definition. It is indescribable. All descriptions only detail the qualities of the thing described. Qualities are not there in the infinite. The moment properties are seen, it becomes finite. The properties are what you see, hear, smell, taste, touch, feel, and think. It is beyond all properties or characteristic features. To understand that I am consciousness and that I have nothing to do with the BMI is the realization of the highest state of spiritual perfection. What is liberation, disciple? Stanza number 192. Sisya Uvach भर्मेणाप्यन्यथा वास्तु जीव भाव परमात्मन तद उपाधिर्नादि अन्नादिर्नाश ईशते अतो क्षय जीव भावो अपि नित्या भवति संसरति न निवर्तेत तन्मोक्ष कथम मे श्री गुरु वद. The Shishya asked that the Supreme Self has come to consider itself as the Jiva through illusion or otherwise is a superimposition which is beginningless. That which is beginningless cannot be said to have an end. So the Jivahood of the Self must also be without an end, ever subject to transmigration. Please tell me, O revered teacher, how then there can be liberation for the self? The disciple Shishya has understood what the Master Guru had been explaining so far. Here a doubt arises in the minds of all those who have been closely following the arguments. Naturally, the Shishya has his doubt and he put it to the Guru. However, may it be by confusion, delusion, or whatever else, the Paramatman, the Supreme Reality, has come to this attitude of a limited ego, Jiva Bhava, the conditioning due to which the Paramatman has apparently become the Jiva is said to be Maya. Maya is beginningless, Anadi. That which is beginningless cannot have an end. Hence Maya can never end. It can never be destroyed. Once the Paramatman has entered this Maya, his Jiva Bhava becomes eternal. If the Jiva Bhava is eternal, the coming and going, the transmigration, samsarti must also be everlasting. This birth and death phenomenon for the Paramatman who has once identified with the conditionings become eternal. If it be so, if, if it be so, dear sir, how can one get liberation? O Guru, please tell me. This is the crux of the humbly worded, meek sounding, respectful question put by the Shishya to the Guru. Self knowledge gives liberation. Sri Guru Vache, stanza number 194. Samyak pushtam तवया विध्वंसावधानेन तृक्षणु प्रमाणिकी ने भवति भ्रांत्या मोहित कल्पना. The Guru replied, O learned boy, you have put a proper question. Listen them carefully. Things conjured up by imagination, which is itself a product of delusion, can never be accepted as facts. Having heard the question asked by the student, the Guru replies. While replying, he appreciated the Shishya's close observation of the logic and compliments him on the very way the question has been put. He says, well put indeed is your question, O intelligent boy. Now carefully and attentively listen to my reply. The imagination created by delusory thinking cannot be accepted as real. The very thought to begin with that there are the equipments is a delusory misconception. Identification with them is a subsequent delusion. These are all imagined due to one's inner confusions. Whatever has been seen in a dream cannot condition the waker. A sumptuous dinner enjoyed in the dream will not remove any hunger in the waking state. Hence, the imagination conjured up by delusion can never become a fact. If what you say is a fact, then of course moksha is impossible. Because of the logic given by you, admits the Guru and adds, but the mind itself is a delusion. Through a delusion, you have created an imagination. This avidya ends only when true wisdom comes. Therefore, my dear boy, the idea that there cannot be any moksha is not true. Thus, though avidya is beginningless, anadi, it can end antavati, antavati when truth is realized. Stanza number 195. Bhranti vina tav sangasya niskriyasya निराकृते न घटेता अर्थ संबंधो नभसो नीलतादिवत. For the self which is unattached, without activity and formless, there can be no connection with the world of objects other than the delusion, just like the blueness, etc., seen in the sky. Continuing his reply, the Guru adds, the Supreme Reality is unattached, has no actions and no forms. It is one without a second. There is nothing other than it for it to get attached to. The self has no activity, for it has no limbs to act with. There are no motivations in it egging it on to act. It has no fields to act in, no objective to gain, no motivation to act. Being all pervasive, it has no form. The concept of any connection between the self and the objects is a delusory misconception. Without delusory misconceptions and imaginations conjured up by delusion, avidya, there cannot be a world of objects. Only when there is a world of objects can we have any relationship and identification with it. Only then can we try to make one thing out of another, that is, perform action. The idea that the sky is blue, murky, dirty, or golden is a delusion. The sky can never be contaminated by color or dirt, yet we see the blue color of the sky and due to lack of correct thinking conclude that the sky is blue. But if we contemplate, we will find that the sky has no color at all. Equally so, if a man contemplates upon the Atma, he will find that it is his self non-dual without any activity or attachment. But then this Atman, through delusion, Maya starts recognizing the various personality layers, koshas, the world of objects, the organs of perception and action, the pranas, the mind and intellect. Thus, the self Atma appears to be conditioned by the body, the mind, and the intellect, and this apparent conditioned self is called Jiva. This ignorance can be ended only by the direct knowledge of the self. Stanza number 196. Savasya drashto nirgun saya kriyasya प्रत्यग्बोधा आनन्दरूपस्य बुद्धि भ्रान्तया प्राप्तो जीवभावो न सत्यो मोहापाये नास्ते वस्तु स्वभावात्. The jivahood of the Atma, which is the witness which is beyond all qualities and activities and which is subjectively experienced as bliss and knowledge. Absolute is unreal and is but a delusion caused by the intellect. Since by nature its jivahood is unreal, it ceases to exist once the delusion has been lifted. By nature, the self is without action, without qualities, and is constant knowledge, bliss, absolute. It is of the nature of bliss because it is a state transcending the mind and the intellect, which constitute the springs of all sorrows. By delusion, this Atma gets identified with the intellect and acquires jivahood. In my dream, when I am jailed, I myself enter the jail and live in it. In fact, I have not really gone to any jail, but due to the misconception in my mind, temporarily I have the experience of being limited by the jail. When the dream ends, neither is there a jail nor is there a jailer. Similarly, when the delusion is removed, when the avidya has ended by the knowledge of Brahman, then with regard to the supreme reality, never is there any jivahood. A delusion may give us an experience which is seemingly real. Similarly, when the delusion is removed, when the avidya has ended by the knowledge of Brahma, then with regard to the supreme reality, never is there any jivahood. A delusion may give us an experience which is seemingly real, but being a mere delusion, it has no existence. Sat. Stanza number 197. यावत् भ्रान्तिस्तावदेवाश्रय सत्ता मिथ्या ज्ञानर्जयभीतस्य प्रमादात् रज्ज्वां सर्पी भ्रांति कालीन एव भ्रांतर्नशीनैव सर्पिः तद्वत् having been caused by an error of judgment and false understanding, the jivahood can exist only as long as the delusion lasts. The rope is mistaken to be the snake only when there is an illusion. Once the illusion is destroyed, there can be no snake. So too in this case. Concluding the argument, Sankara tells the student that as long as there is confusion and delusion, so long there will be the existence of the individuality. The jiva who exists only as long as the delusion lasts. The delusion or non-apprehension of reality gives rise to the misapprehension that I am the body, I am the mind, I am the intellect. With reference to the world of objects, there arises a feeling I am the doer. With reference to the mind and intellect, there arises the feeling I am the enjoyer. These feelings in their aggregate constitute the jivahood. Since they have risen out of delusion, they will last only as long as the delusion lasts. As long as the nature of the rope is not understood, and as long as the knowledge of the rope is not fully realized, so long the delusion continues and the snake vision persists. In utter mental confusion alone can you have the vision of the serpent. When the mental confusion has ended, the snake cannot be. With the knowledge of the rope, the misconception that it is a snake must necessarily vanish. Likewise, as long as the Atma in us is not experienced, the pluralistic phenomenal world is experienced through the instruments of the body, mind, and intellect. There will also be the triple world of the subject, the object, and the relationship between them. Once the Atma is realized, the entire perceived pluralistic phenomenal world will roll away and disappear. The experience of the self is gained in an immediate knowledge. This experience comes not as a result of any special sadhana. All sadhanas help the seeker to withdraw from his BMI preoccupations. Real knowledge comes only through intuition. It is immediate. In Kathopanishad it is said, it is like lightning, it is sudden quick. Teaching yourself to withdraw from the worldly preoccupations take time. When the mind is withdrawn from all its preoccupations, the experience of the infinite is instantaneous. This experience has been explained by hundreds of examples throughout the Upanishads. In Buddhist literature, it is called prajna, instant consciousness, intellectual analysis. Vijnana is necessary for certain types of students. Philosophy and religion are only helpful handmaids to prepare the mind of the seeker for the direct and immediate experience of the infinite. This infinite self is experienced not because of religion nor because of philosophy. They are as much help as our pilgrimages, rituals, vows, japa, austerities, tapa, and meditations, dhyana. Experience of the infinite Brahma does not depend upon anything. It is not a mediate experience, meaning it is not gained through the instrument of any equipment. It is not because of the teacher nor because of the scriptures. However, teacher, scriptures, sadhana, study all help us to withdraw the mind from its preoccupations. The mind withdraws from its preconceptions. The mind withdrawn from its preconceptions and held in attention in full alertness is the mind that receives intimations from the infinite. The infinite is your essential nature. It is an immediate experience. Stanza number 199. 198. अनादित्व में विद्याया कार्यस्यापि तथेऽस्ते उत्पन्नायां तु विद्यायां विद्याकमनाद्यपि. स्टेंजा नंबर 199. प्रबोधे स्वपन वत्सर्वै सह मूलम विनश्यति अनादिपीदं नो नित्यं Prag-bhav is sputam. So too avidya and its effects are said to be beginningless. But when there is rise of vidya, then avidya, even though it is beginningless, is destroyed, root and branch, just as dreams are destroyed on waking up. The phenomenal universe is not eternal, it is evident like the former non-existence, Prag-bhava. When the cause is beginningless, its effects must also have the same nature. Ignorance, avidya, which is beginningless, must necessarily produce effects which are also beginningless. Avidya is the cause for the very first thought, therefore it is beyond time. But when true knowledge of the self is born, when the right apprehension is born, the non-apprehension will have to end. As long as the cause, the non-apprehension remains, its effects, the misapprehensions must also remain. But there is one solvent for this great cause. The antithesis of ignorance is knowledge. Where there is knowledge, there ignorance cannot be. Where there is light, there darkness cannot be. Light and darkness cannot remain in one and the same place at one and the same time. The moment light is brought into a cave which might have been in darkness from the beginning of time, the darkness, no matter how old or how dense, must immediately vanish. Similarly, when the knowledge of the self is born, the ignorance with all its effects, non-apprehension with all its misapprehensions will have to end, though it is beginningless. On waking up, the dream ends fully. On realizing the nature of the self, the misapprehensions to their very roots, the non-apprehension must end. Not only are the misapprehensions eliminated, but also their very cause. The non-apprehension in deep sleep, the effects end, but the causal body, the non-apprehension, meaning the cause remains in the final spiritual experience. The cause also ends. Then never will the fear of apprehensions rise in us. When truth is apprehended, the effects along with their cause, the causal body, and even though the cause is beginningless, anadi, though ignorance, avidya is beginningless, it is not eternal. That which is born must die, and that which is unborn cannot die. But there are exceptions. Avidya, though it is unborn, will end. This peculiar paradox is explained by an example. It is clear just as Prag Abhava. Prag Abhava is a technical term used by the Indian logicians. Nikayas. In Nyaya Shastra, they employ this term freely. A pot before it was made was in the mud. Instead of the pot, there was only mud. From the mud, the potter cannot make a milch cow, nor can he make a succulent apple. He cannot create a wife for himself out of mud. He can only create various kinds of pots. The pot he is going to make must be potentially possible in the mud. In the mud is the potential pot. In the mud is the unmanifest pot. The unmanifest pot was in the mud even before the pot was made. When the pot is made, the pot which was hitherto unmanifest is now manifest. Now, when was the potential pot born in the mud? The possibility of the pot in the mud was beginningless. Anadi, the possibility of the pot in the mud was born when the mud was born. Nay, when the earth was born, nay, it was in the very essential nature of the earth. When the pot is made, the potential pot has become manifest. When a pot has manifested, its beginningless potential condition has ended. Before Prag, its actual manifestation, the manifested pot was not there, abhava. The moment it manifested its potential state, which was beginningless, ended. So, this previous non existence, Prak Bhava, is an example given to illustrate a beginningless thing coming to an end. Ordinarily, that which is beginningless must be endless. But Vedanta says that it is possible for a beginningless thing to end. How? Like the previous non existence of a pot. When the pot has manifested, its unmanifest condition, which was beginningless, has ended. Similarly, says the Guru, even though avidya is beginningless, it ends with the apprehension of reality vidya. Therefore, though your question is beautifully put, please understand that it is not a great question after all. Stanza number 200. अनादरेऽपि विध्वंस प्रागभावस्य वीक्षितः युद्धबुद्धेपाधि संबंधा परिकल्पनी आत्मनि जीवत्वं ने ततो स्टेंजा नंबर 201 जीवत्वं ने ततो अन्यतु स्वरूपेण विलक्षणः संबंध सत्वात्मनो बुद्धया मिथ्या ज्ञान पुरःसरः. Although it is beginningless, former non-existence is found to have an end. So too the jiva-hood, which is imagined to be in the Atma through its apparent conditioning in the superimposed attributes, like the intellect is not real, but the other, the self, is intrinsically different from it, jivahood. The relation between the Atma and the intellect is due to the false knowledge. The concept of individuality has arisen because of the consciousness identifying with or reflecting in the intellect. Intellect is used here because the mind and the sense organs are incorporated in the subtle body. This jiva bhava, the individuality in its essential nature, is nothing other than the Atma, but because of the conditionings, the self, the Om appears to be the PFT, the Jiva. If I can understand myself to be of the nature of the self, the sorrows that are supplied to me through the body, the mind, and the intellect can be ended. Thus, though this avidya is beginningless, it has an end, and in the Prag Bhava Abhava, as in the example of the beginningless non existence of the pot in the mud, ending in the production of the pot from the mud. If this avidya has an end, O teacher, tell us how it can be ended. What is the secret technique? This Jiva Bhavana has come about because of the intellect, and so through the same intellect it should be ended. The intellect turned outwards toward the OET creates the Jiva hood. When the same intellect is turned inwards toward the Om, the awakening of the Atma, the Self, takes place. At this moment, the intellect is functioning turned entirely outwards and is fully engaged in its busy preoccupations with the fascinating world of OET. The worlds of experiences in the OET are all delusory misconceptions born out of the non-apprehension of reality. Hence, the intellect at this moment is full of wrong notions, misconceptions, and false knowledge. Mithya Jnana. Due to the ignorance of the self, the misconceptions I am the body, I am the mind, I am the intellect have arisen, and thereafter considering myself to be the limited ego and thinking that my happiness depends upon the world of objects, I find no way to gain real and lasting happiness. All this is false knowledge, mithya jnana. When the intellect leaves its misconceptions and turns towards the eternal self, then even though the avidya is beginningless, it ends with the dawn of the knowledge of the self. Stanza number 202. विनिवृत्ति भयविवितस्य सम्यग्ज्ञानेन नान्यथा ब्रह्मात्मैव तव विज्ञानं सम्यक् ज्ञानं श्रुतेमर्तम्. The supreme positions will cease to function at the dawn of right knowledge and in no other way. According to the scriptures, realization of the identity of the soul and Brahma is right knowledge. When reality is apprehended, the non-apprehension of it called avidya ends. There is no other method by which the confusions of life created by the false ego can end. At present, the intellect is riddled with illusory misconceptions such as I am the body, etc. This false knowledge is discussed in the previous verse. Now, in this verse, right knowledge, Samik Jnana, is being explained. False knowledge, Mithya Jnana, gives the feelings I am a limited mortal, a finite creature, etc. When this intellect now drowned in wrong notions emerges out in right knowledge, Samyak Jnana, this misconception created stupid idea I am a limited creature will also end. Right knowledge is the first hand knowledge of the identity of Atma and Brahma. Jnana means book knowledge. Vijnanam is the special knowledge, meaning a first-hand direct knowledge, the first-hand experience that the Atma, the self in me, is the one self everywhere. This Samyak Jnana alone can remove Mithya Jnana. Stanza number 203. तद आत्मन आत्मनो सम्यक विवेक सिद्ध्यति ततो विवेक कर्तव्य प्रत्यग सदात्मनो. This realization comes only through right discrimination made between the self and the not self. That's why one must strive to discriminate between the individual self within and the eternal self everywhere. Right knowledge, samyak jnana, can be gained by diligent discrimination between the self and the not self, and this must be continuously done. Because of the past vasanas, we strongly identify again and again with the matter vestures in us. Hence, again and again, we should detach from them. As a result of this discrimination, we come to understand the identity of the individual self within and the eternal self present everywhere. Samyak Jnana is the antidote for Mithya Jnana. Right knowledge is the specific remedy for false knowledge. Right knowledge can be gained through discrimination. Every seeker should therefore discriminate continuously between Atma and Anatman until direct realization dawns in his heart. Stanza number 204. Jalam pankvad yantam pankapaye jalam safutam यथा भाति तथा आत्मापि दोषा भावे सफुट प्रभा. Water which is extremely muddy appears as transparent water when the mud has been removed. So too the Atma manifests its clear luster when the impurities have been removed. Water is clear in its essential nature. When it holds mud is suspension, it is said to be muddy. From a sample of muddied water, if all the mud is removed, what remains is the water pure and clear as it was before it got muddy. Likewise, the Atma is ever immaculate. When there are impurities such as objects, emotions, and thoughts in the Atma, they create agitations in the mind, and the Atma is not cognized in its essential purity and infinite brilliance. When these agitations and sorrows are removed from one's direct and intimate recognition, the Atma shines forth. These impurities, our false knowledge, mithya jnana, can be removed by right knowledge, samik jnana, which can be generated only through diligent and constant discrimination. Hence, discriminate constantly is the unsaid suggestion of the Acharya to the seekers. Stanza number 205. असन्निवर्तो तो सदात्मना सफुटं प्रतित्रेतस्य भवते परित्यज्य ततो निराशः करणीय एव सदात्मनः साधव हमादि वस्तुनः. This very individual self is clearly realized as the eternal self when the unreal cease to exist. So one must strive to completely remove the ego, etc., from the eternal self. The BMI, PFT, and OET are the constituents of the not self. At present, we are preoccupied with them. When the not self is entirely eliminated at the still moment of meditation, this very same PFT or ego will be recognized as the pure self, the Sada Atma. When all that is the not self and its consequent agitations, vikshepa, are removed, the ego, which is suffering its limitations, will cognize itself to be the Brahma. Therefore, this negation of the Anatman should be continued till the point of deep and total realization is reached. Stanza number 206. अतो नायं प्रात्मा सयादि विज्ञानं यशब्दभागे विकारित्वाज्य वाच्य पृच्छिन् वहितुं दृश्ये वादे व्यभिचारित्वनानित्यो नित्य इष्यते. For For the following reasons, the intellectual seat which we have so far spoken of cannot be supreme self. It is subject to change, it is inert and insentient, it is limited, it is an object of the senses, and it is not constant. A mortal, perishable thing indeed cannot be said to be the immortal, imperishable Atma. The Vijnanamaya Kosha is being negated in this verse. It cannot be the Atma because of the following reasons. Number A, because it is subject to change. Vikartitvad. The intellectual seat is subject to change. Our ideals are always changing. Our intelligence varies from time to time. Therefore, this cannot be the self which is ever the same. B. Because it is insentient. Jada itvad. The intellect by itself is inert. When the light of consciousness touches it, then alone does it become sentient and shines out of the individual to think, to rationalize, to discriminate, to judge, etc. C. Because it is limited. Prichinatvad. Every intellect has its limitations. A great artist may know everything about art, but he may not know anything about physics. A physician may be a great genius in science, but he may not know anything in politics. Politicians in India need not necessarily know economics. A Vedantin may know his Vedanta but know perhaps nothing of other subjects. So each one may be great in his own field but not in others. The intellect in everywhere is limited. Therefore, the intellectual seat cannot be the unlimited infinite self. The self is unlimited and undivided. Hence, the intellect cannot be the Atma. D. Because it is perceivable. Drishyatvad. We know our own intellects. We say, I am dull, I am intelligent, etc. We are conscious of our intellects. The intellect is an object of consciousness. The object cannot be the subject, the pure consciousness. E. Because it is not constantly present. Vyabhicharitvad. It is not constantly present, faithfully serving at all times. In deep sleep, the intellect is not available. In the waking condition, it is available. In a perverted condition, it lives in the dream. It does not work at all during deep sleep. When swooning or when under chloroform, at times it is available, at times it is not. In the waking state also, we find that at times we are intelligent and other times we are dull and unintelligent. Therefore, it cannot be the Atma. F. Because it is not eternal, a nitya atvad, it is mortal, changeable and variable. Hence, the intellect cannot be the self, the reality which is eternal. The next personality layer, the bliss seat, is taken up for discussion from the following verse. So, I conclude this video at this stage. Next video number 15 will start with Anandamaya Kosha Bliss Seat, stanza number 207 onward. Thank you for watching this video. Namaskar, my dear friend. Thank you.